wage a relentless war to the last drop of blood against anyone who dares to attack our states.
Burkina Faso just announced a $200 billion road project, more than its entire GDP. How is that even possible? And why are China and the US suddenly paying attention? Let's find out. It started with no fireworks, no parades, and certainly no Western press coverage. Just a quiet government release, a few scattered reports, and then an explosion of movement across the Burkinabè landscape. Construction machines, hundreds of them, began rolling out across every province from Sahel to Centre-Sud. Entire villages paused to watch as bulldozers flattened paths no one thought would ever be paved. Soon, the number became impossible to ignore. $200 billion. That's what President Ibrahim Traoré's government announced it would invest under the newly launched Faso Meboé initiative, a national program to overhaul Burkina Faso's entire road network. To put that into perspective, the country's entire GDP hovers around $20 billion. This wasn't just bold, it was unthinkable. But it wasn't a bluff. Just weeks after the announcement, over 900 heavy-duty machines were acquired, shipped, and deployed. Not rented, owned, not operated by foreign crews, but by local engineers and trained youth. Drone footage from rural areas showed a transformation in motion, lines of road rollers clearing paths through the savannah, remote communities seeing tarmac for the first time in history, and logistics teams mapping out networks that would eventually span thousands of kilometers. What's more, this was not a project driven by World Bank policy, IMF restructuring, or foreign technical assistance. No Western logos were anywhere to be seen. The project is entirely Burkinabè-owned and Burkinabè-led, though China is reportedly acting as a quiet technical consultant behind the scenes. But even Chinese engineers, accustomed to mega projects across the globe, have reportedly expressed shock at the scale and independence of this effort. For decades, Africa has been the land of grand promises and failed infrastructure dreams. But something about this feels different. There are no ribbon cuttings staged for donors. No pilot projects were used to test the waters. This is full execution, with an urgent wartime pace. Still, the question persists. How did a country facing security threats, economic pressure, and decades of instability manage to pull this off without anyone seeing it coming? Sources close to the presidency hint at deep planning months in advance, with Traoré setting aside billions from gold revenues, strategic partnerships, and domestic resource mobilization, all away from the international spotlight. They were building the engine before they even announced the race, one analyst put it. But beyond the money, the scale of the organization is what's turning heads. This isn't a show project limited to a capital city or a single corridor. Every region is involved. Every province has a target. In some areas, roads are being built at night, under heavy security, to maintain momentum in regions where insurgents may attempt sabotage. And the goals don't stop at roads. Embedded within the Faso Meboé blueprint are plans to integrate the road system with agriculture hubs, rural electrification, schools, and clinics, forming a physical grid of development that could, if completed, redefine what we think is possible for a West African state. Critics are waiting for it to collapse under its ambition. But so far, the movement is accelerating. And behind closed doors, even skeptical governments are now reassessing their posture toward Burkina Faso, wondering whether this is simply a temporary stunt or the early signs of a continental shift. Burkina Faso may have once been overlooked on the map, but now, all eyes are locked in, watching each mile of asphalt as if it's writing a new chapter in Africa's history. And that leads to the next mystery. What exactly is the Faso Meboé initiative? What's its structure, and how did it emerge with such explosive force? Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The $200 billion announcement might have stunned the world, but what lies beneath it is even more extraordinary. The Faso Meboé initiative isn't a flashy mega project stitched together for headlines. It's a deeply structured, homegrown machine of national transformation. And the deeper you go, the more radical it becomes. Most people imagine road projects as a matter of cement, asphalt, and kilometers. But what President Traoré has unveiled is something entirely different. This is not just a road-building exercise, it's a reconstruction of state logic. By the way, we have launched a merch that honors the African leaders who are taking a stand for Africa. Check them out. To show you also stand with loyal sons of Africa, no matter where you are. Unlike typical government programs, Faso Meboe didn't come with bloated launch ceremonies or foreign consultants presenting PowerPoints. Instead, it appeared fully armed with equipment, regional task forces, and what insiders call command precision. That's because the initiative isn't operating through the usual civilian ministries that tend to move slowly. It's running under a wartime developmental framework, a centralized, action-first system built to execute, not negotiate. There are no loose ends, no overlapping departments. Every bulldozer has a map, every team has a deadline, and every village has a purpose tied to a road, or it doesn't get one. Even the name Faso Mebo signals something deeper. Translated through regional dialects, it loosely means the path to ourselves, or our return route. It reflects not only a physical road, but a psychological one, a reconnection with autonomy. After decades of externally dictated priorities, this initiative is designed to make sure every step forward is decided from within. Every kilometer built is a message that Burkina Faso is now determining its direction, without approval from Paris, Washington, or Brussels. The operational system is unlike anything seen in the region. Orders are issued not in bureaucratic memos but in command chains. Each zone, whether Sahel, Cascades, or Center-West, is given monthly infrastructure targets. Reports are generated through GPS tracking, drones monitor construction activity, and disciplinary action is immediate if corruption or delay is found. Multiple regional officials have reportedly been dismissed quietly for non-performance. This is not the culture of relaxed projects padded with time extensions. This is execution at the pace of national survival. What makes the initiative even more surprising is its refusal to imitate past models. It borrows ideas from China's Belt and Road, but throws out the playbook of debt-fueled infrastructure. The roads are not being built by foreign firms or with conditional grants. Instead, Burkina Faso is using revenue from its gold exports, internal tax restructuring, and strategic asset reserves. There is no begging bowl here, no IMF fingerprint. This is fiscal sovereignty in motion, quietly asserting itself through miles of gravel, tar, and manpower. The labor, too, is locally sourced, not just for construction, but for design, planning, and oversight. University graduates are being pulled directly into project teams, trained on the ground in engineering and logistics. Some of them had never seen a construction vehicle before. Now they're operating graders and road rollers under military-style discipline. Others are being fast-tracked into technical leadership roles, replacing the old habit of outsourcing everything to consultants flown in from abroad. But the real uniqueness of Faso Mebo lies in its ideology. Roads are not being placed randomly. They are carefully aligned with sites of agricultural importance, supply chain bottlenecks, school gaps, and security zones. The plan is deliberate, almost surgical. Every region is assigned not just kilometers, but also goals to increase school attendance, lower maternal mortality, and expand food distribution. These are not roads to nowhere. They are arteries of a future state. Perhaps most radical of all is the long-term vision embedded in the project. Unlike Western models that operate in 5-year election cycles, Faso Mebo is framed in 25-year stages. It doesn't plan for applause. It plans for permanence. That alone separates it from the donor-driven, pilot-heavy frameworks that have haunted African development for decades. Burkina Faso is no longer experimenting. It's building relentlessly and with purpose. The world may still be staring at the number, $200 billion, in disbelief. But what they should be watching is the structure behind it. Because this is no ordinary road plan. It is the physical expression of a new governance model, built on self-reliance, urgency, and the refusal to wait for permission. And the results are already unfolding. But how do these roads translate into real-world benefits for farmers, merchants, workers, and the everyday Burkinabè? The answer lies in a single word: flow. Flow of goods, of people, of labor, of ideas. And that flow is creating an economic pulse that wasn't there before. In a country where poor roads have historically turned simple commutes into multi-day journeys, the emergence of wide, navigable highways is doing more than easing movement. It's reprogramming the national economy from the ground up. What used to be considered remote is now being reclassified as reachable. Villages that were once off-grid are suddenly logistics hubs. Farmland that once went fallow due to inaccessibility is now being harvested, packed, and sold in the same week. The economic impact of a road is rarely seen as dramatic, but in Burkina Faso, it's seismic. For years, transportation costs consumed nearly half the value of goods in rural areas. A sack of onions might sell for 5,000 CFA in the city, but the cost of getting it there, across rutted dirt roads, broken bridges, and seasonal floods, made the whole exercise pointless. Farmers were often forced to sell locally for peanuts or let crops rot. That's changing. Asphalt changes everything. Reports from newly connected regions show a spike in small-scale agribusiness activity. Cooperatives are forming around key highways. Grain is being stored in better facilities. Perishable goods are moving faster. And women, who often dominate local markets, are among the biggest winners. They now transport, sell, and restock with a speed that multiplies profits. But the transformation isn't just in agriculture. It's visible in the rise of roadside microeconomies. Entire settlements are springing up along the new tarmac like green shoots after rain. Small repair shops, food stalls, fuel kiosks, and motorcycle depots have begun clustering near intersections and rest points. In places that were silent at nightfall, light bulbs now glow, powered by solar hubs being installed alongside road infrastructure. The labor market is also shifting. One of the least discussed aspects of the initiative is its absorption of idle youth. In a country where unemployment and underemployment are chronic, Faso Meboe is functioning as a kind of national recruitment agency. Young people are being trained in masonry, machine operation, surveying, and project management, not as charity, but as necessity. These aren't internships. They are contracts with real pay, real deadlines, and real growth. Some are learning to build roads, others are learning to audit them. And as workers move, so does spending. Mobile money transfers have doubled in some newly connected zones. Markets once held twice a week are now open daily. There's a noticeable redistribution of income and opportunity, not by decree, but by direction. The road decides where the money goes. The ripple effect extends even further. With connectivity comes migration, not outward, but inward. Skilled tradespeople from larger towns are moving into secondary cities where demand for services is exploding. Teachers are more willing to accept postings in rural schools when they know a paved road connects them to hospitals and family. Even small businesses in the capital are relocating to less crowded regions, a reversal of the urban drain that's plagued African cities for decades. And then there's trade. Burkina Faso may be landlocked, but it's strategically placed. With proper roads, it can become a transit state, linking Mali, Niger, Togo, and Côte d'Ivoire. Already, informal cross-border trading is increasing. Traders who once feared muddy detours and robbery-prone bush paths are now using structured corridors. The country is starting to feel less like a broken chain of rural fragments and more like a connected economic organism. What's important to note is that none of this required external recalibration. It wasn't the IMF that made farmers rich, or the EU that opened new markets. It was a domestic decision to lay down tar, and with it, a new direction. But with new movements comes new vulnerabilities. And that brings us to an even more strategic layer of the Faso Meboe plan: security. Because these roads aren't just carrying goods, they're carrying the state. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. With trucks now roaring through old dust trails and markets expanding at every paved intersection, one might think the Faso Meno initiative is purely an economic miracle. But beneath the development lies a more strategic calculation. These roads were also built to fight, not with bullets, but with reach, with speed, and with presence. In a country long stalked by armed insurgents, this infrastructure is quietly changing the balance of power. Burkina Faso has battled insurgent threats for years, especially in its northern and eastern regions, where foreign-trained militants, bandits, and separatist elements exploited one simple advantage: isolation. Dirt paths, broken terrain, and weather-dependent tracks made entire regions unreachable. By the time security forces were alerted to an attack, the perpetrators were gone, swallowed by geography. These weren't just logistical nightmares, they were gaps in sovereignty. Now, the terrain is shifting, literally. Fresh asphalt is extending into areas that haven't seen a government presence in decades. What once took 4 hours over rugged ground now takes 40 minutes by highway. And with that speed comes a change in posture. Troops can be deployed, threats can be contained, and intelligence can move through civilian channels with far greater ease. Several outposts previously under threat have reported a complete reversal of insurgent activity since major roads reached them. The enemy didn't retreat because of more weapons. They retreated because the state arrived first. And it's not just the army benefiting. Communities once forced to negotiate with armed groups for movement, trade, or even access to water are now choosing sides, and increasingly, they're choosing the state. Why? Because the roads didn't just bring soldiers, they brought trust. Mobile clinics now show up on schedule. Supply chains deliver food in times of drought. Schools receive teaching materials on time. In short, the state is no longer an abstract idea in Ouagadougou. It's a visible, functioning network of services arriving at speed. There's a psychological warfare element too. In areas long abandoned, the sight of machinery, graders, rollers, and surveyors is disorienting. Entire generations grew up without ever seeing state-led construction. For them, governance came in the form of NGO tents or UN convoys. But now, the state has its trucks, its logos, and its people, trained and confident. That visibility has power. It signals that Burkina Faso is not waiting to be saved. It is reinforcing its claim to every inch of itself. Even the sequencing of road deployment reflects a security logic. Before major paving operations begin in unstable areas, community liaison officers are dispatched to negotiate cooperation, identify risks, and establish micro-level monitoring. Local youth are hired to assist the construction crews, creating not just employment, but buy-in. Villages are no longer bystanders to the roads, they become stakeholders. In a few cases, elders have even helped identify militant hideouts preemptively, protecting the very roads that connect them to opportunity. And yet, the fight is far from over. There have been attacks, especially on night convoys and isolated equipment sites. But Traoré's administration expected this. That's why the project includes mobile defense units assigned specifically to protect key infrastructure. Think of them as a hybrid between engineers and infantry, building and defending the arteries of the state simultaneously. This is what makes Faso-Mabo so unique. It understands that in Africa, infrastructure isn't neutral, it's contested terrain, and whoever controls it, controls the future. Interestingly, this new security strategy isn't being sold with grand speeches. There's no performative chest beating, just action, quiet, coordinated, and deliberate. But the message is clear. These roads don't just connect, they protect. Still, with this kind of military-civilian integration, with billions invested and borders blurring between development and defense, an uncomfortable question begins to surface. Is Burkina Faso becoming a model of stability or a target of its ambition? By now, it's clear that the Faso-Mabo initiative is more than just infrastructure. It's a declaration of intent, a message carved into the very soil of Burkina Faso. We will not be broken, and we will not be controlled. But as the roads snake outward, connecting provinces, markets, and conflict zones, something else is spreading with them: influence. And influence in geopolitics is never a quiet affair. Within months of the initiative's rollout, whispers began circulating through neighboring capitals. Mali, Niger, Togo, and even parts of Ghana have reportedly sent envoys to study the model. Not because it's flawless, but because it's fearless. A government under sanctions, facing insurgency, and without traditional donor backing, just committed to a $200 billion megaproject and is executing it with military discipline and visible results. That doesn't just raise eyebrows, it challenges assumptions. Western institutions accustomed to having the final say on African development timelines are now in an awkward position. Here is a state acting outside the script, ignoring World Bank procedures, sidestepping donor frameworks, and still delivering tangible outcomes. That makes Burkina Faso a problem, not because it's failing, but because it's succeeding without them. Even more disruptive is how fast the Traoré government is exporting the model ideologically. In closed-door meetings with other Sahelian leaders, officials are already proposing a regional infrastructure pact modeled on Faso-Meboé, where states pool resources, co-manage construction fleets, and coordinate security corridors across borders. If that gains traction, it could lead to a Sahel-led transport and defense bloc, free from NATO oversight or French strategic influence. In other words, a West Africa that no longer asks for permission. This is precisely why international media coverage has remained oddly muted. There's very little appetite in Brussels or Washington to celebrate a Burkinabè revolution that cuts out their financing, ignores their contractors, and proves that Africa can handle billion-dollar projects on its terms. And yet, underground, the model is already resonating, from Kinshasa to Khartoum. But with this rising influence comes risk. Burkina Faso is not only building roads, it's building expectations. And expectations attract scrutiny, sabotage, and subversion. Multiple intelligence leaks suggest that attempts are already underway to destabilize the initiative's logistics chain through economic pressure, political interference, or even attempts to co-opt key officials. That's why Traoré's inner circle has become famously closed and disciplined, shielding the operation like a classified mission. Every mile of progress is treated as a target, and every local victory must be guarded from international disruption. There's also the internal risk of overreach. Mobilizing $200 billion, no matter how well planned, will always carry the danger of bottlenecks, shortages, or mismanagement. If inflation spikes or if workers go unpaid, the public support that now powers the initiative could turn against it. That's why the administration is moving with quiet urgency, delivering results not in speeches, but in visible kilometers. Delays are corrected quickly, mistakes are buried fast. The only thing that moves forward is the road. And perhaps that's the genius and the gamble of Faso-Meboé. It doesn't rely on spin, it relies on momentum. As long as that momentum holds, it builds not only highways, but legitimacy. In an era when democracy itself is often reduced to ballots without outcomes, Burkina Faso is offering a different idea: infrastructure as governance. Not in theory, but in asphalt. Not as a campaign promise, but as a contract fulfilled. What's emerging is a paradox. To some, Traoré is becoming a model of post-colonial leadership, firm, focused, and unapologetically sovereign. To others, he's becoming a dangerous symbol, a reminder that Africa doesn't need saving, it needs space. In either case, the world is being forced to look again, and look closer. If Burkina Faso can, what is the other nation's excuse? Are they not willing to change? Let us know in the comment section. What do you think Traoré did differently? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.